sounds of nature. Isn't it amazing that this old trunk that's clearly cut so long ago continues to sprout? It's just amazing. Amazing. And we're going to be looking at some trunks that are a couple of thousand years old right now, because, well, the oldest one is probably the Psalm, because the Book of Wisdom, the first reading, is contemporary. It's like Second Temple period. It's late second. It's in the at the end of the 1st century BC. So the Psalm has to be much older than that. The Psalms in general are attributed to David. Some of them are probably later in the exile period. So it's a fascinating reading from the Book of Wisdom, and a fascinating reading from the letter of James, and a fascinating reading from the Gospel. And the Psalm is very much in the line of the Book of Wisdom in the same kind of thought. So in that sense, maybe the Book of Wisdom text is inspired by the Psalm. They say that the Book of Wisdom was written in Alexandria by the Jewish community there, some leader of the Jewish community, some thinker, some pious person who had his head on his shoulders, probably had a lot of formation in the Greek culture, and there was a great concern that the younger generations were drawn by this culture. And at this time also it was very prosperous, because the Roman Empire was in place for quite some time and very organized, and commerce across the Mediterranean. So the brave new world was very attractive, and the Greek thought, the Greek philosophies, and the different schools of Greek philosophy. And so those responsible for the young generation were very concerned about transmitting the great ancestral wisdom and life to their young people, which is a very noble concern. And this text is actually quite surprising, and we can see why this book is so charged with inspiration, with a reflection for those of us who follow Jesus. And I encourage you to read it and spend time with it as well. And it's also connected to the gospel reading. That's why it's chosen, actually. That's the criteria for the Sunday reading selections. The main thread is to read the gospel story, because the Christian community gathers on Sundays. So it's a very well thought out and experience, so much 2,000 years of reading the scriptures, since Christians gather to do more or less what happened on the Emmaus path of Jesus on Easter Sunday evening, to ponder the scriptures and what they said about Jesus, and that means to tell the story of Jesus in the light of the scriptures. And so that's the core scriptural part. And then there's the Eucharist, the breaking of the bread, and the recognition of Jesus in the breaking of the bread. So those are like the two big moments of each Sunday. And so then there's a 3-yearly cycle that goes through the gospel readings and the most salient points. And then today we're reading Mark's gospel. We're at the third of the liturgical year. It starts in Advent, and then the ordinary time starts after Christmas in the New Year. And now we have done Matthew I mixed up two things here. Forgive me. I need to backtrack. When we read the daily readings, we read all 3 Gospels in 1 year. But in the Sunday cycle, we have take the one Gospel each year. And this year we're reading Mark's Gospel. And so we're at this passage today where Jesus is talking about his passion. And it's kind of strangely, eerily weird how the Book of Wisdom almost does a profile of Calvary and the process of judgment leading to Calvary. And it says, "Let us beset the just one because he is obnoxious to us. He sets himself against our doings." And that's the exact same motivation that had Herodias ask for the head of John the Baptist, because he set himself against her doings. There comes the sun. It's all right. It was out for a while, obviously. It was actually peeping out earlier before I started the live stream. Oh, this morning there were fishermen out here fishing, so as the days get shorter, we'll have a chance eventually to see the fishermen on the live stream. And they had their lights on. It was still darker, right? So they didn't need the lights to see, but the lights apparently have an effect on drawing the fish. So Herodias then had John the Baptist neutralized or eliminated in order to have some peace, because he wouldn't be disturbing her anymore. But this line of the Book of Wisdom reflects that psychology and that strategy. "Let us beset the just one because he is obnoxious to us. He sets himself against our doings, reproaches us for transgressions of the law." And this is why all the prophets were eliminated and neutralized in the centuries earlier, especially leading up to the exile and throughout that period. The prophets were not welcome because they were critical of the behavior of the people, and especially of the rulers, who were very corrupted. And so this is both the religious rulers and the political rulers. And when the prophets spoke out, then they were eliminated. And we see that and probably there we also have some of the Psalms, like the one today. We'll get there in a moment. "He charges us with violations of our training. Let us see whether his words be true and find out what will happen to him. For," listen to this line, people, "for if the just one be the Son of God, God will defend him." "For if the just one be the Son of God, God will defend him and will deliver him from the hand of his foes," which is also text from the Psalms. "With revilement and torture, let us put the just one to the test." And that happens, that's a pattern that happens through history. And it's just a very perceptive author that captures all of this in the Book of Wisdom. How many human rights defenders and outspoken advocates are jailed or tortured by dictatorships. "With revilement and torture, let us put the just one to the test, that we may have good proof of his gentleness and try his patience." Isn't this incredible? From the one hand, they're aware, well, it's actually the writer of the Book of Wisdom is putting this together in this way, and it's maybe with a touch of irony, because the wise man, the author of the Book of Wisdom, has a heart and a mind that's very perceptive and very, very knowledgeable of human nature, and also sees is tying in here the qualities of the just one, who is gentle and humble. This is extraordinary. And patient. "Let us condemn him to a shameful death." And crucifixion was the most shameful death. "For according to his own words, God will take care of him." Amazing, isn't it? And then we have Psalm 54, and it has a lot of those kind of lines The Lord upholds my life. So that's the Lord will take care of him. I trust in the Lord at all times, even if I go through a dark valley. You know, those are lines from the Psalms that are so beautiful. For the haughty men have risen up against me. Happens. It happens. In politics today and many different places. For the haughty men have risen up against me. The ruthless seek my life. Behold, God is my helper. The Lord sustains my life. So I think I'm not a scholar in exegete, but it'd be an interesting question for scholarship to see the connection here between this psalm and the text of the Book of Wisdom. And obviously the psalm was a prayer that the author of the Book of Wisdom would have prayed, and maybe regularly prayed, because they have had a pattern of prayer and order in the praying of the Psalms like we still do today, uninterrupted from that time. Imagine you know that I wrote a little bit, it's going to be published now. It's the next newsletter article in the Magdalen newsletter, and the Crossroads section. You might want to check that out if you haven't been aware of it. But this one that is ready for publishing shortly is commenting something on the prayer of the Psalms and how continuous it has been, and how we share that with so many believers who profess faith in different ways. The Lord upholds my life. And now we move on then to the gospel that combines this theme of suffering of the just one. Jesus reminding his disciples that he must suffer, and they don't get it. And then he brings a child in front of them. I think I'm going to comment this a little bit more at the Mass in an hour's time, an hour and a quarter, an hour and 20 minutes. And because it's a very rich theme. And I discovered a little booklet again, even though I have it for years and didn't really fully read it ever, and often wanted to do it, by the famous Van Balthasar. It's a book about become like a child, unless we become like children. And there we have the letter of James, which is also very rich today, and it's about peace and overcoming war and preventing war. And that's very interesting. So we'll leave it like that for today, because that's a lot of thought. And I wish you a very beautiful Sunday. And this beautiful morning here at the Sea of Galilee. God bless you. See you later, alligators. You see, I'm here actually. Have a blessed Sunday.